Beginning Knitting, Part 2. If this is the first time you've joined us, welcome, welcome, welcome. Hope you're doing all right in these interesting times. And if you're back for more after having watched the first series of videos, thanks for coming back. That's great. Today we're going to work on a project, and this very well may be your first project. So in order to do this, you'll need to know how to cast on, how to do the knit stitch, how to do the purl stitch, and how to bind off or cast off. If you're not familiar with these knitting skills, please refer to our first 2 videos in the series and we'll get you right up to speed. But hopefully you've been practicing those things and you're comfortable now and you're ready to go. So for our project today, we need pretty much the same thing as what we needed when you were starting off. You can even use the same yarn. Totally up to you. We are going to be making a headband, and our headband has that cool little twist in it, which makes it look a lot fancier than if it was just flat, but it's really simple. And your headband can be any size you like. This is for a teenage girl, young adult, small-headed person. This is for a wee little one, and you can make them as large as you like. The one I'm working on and I'm going to show you in a minute is a little bit for a little larger circumference of a head. Doesn't matter, all the same skills. So you are going to need your yarn. You're going to need your needle. You want to make sure that your yarn that you're using corresponds with your needle size. Remember, you can go to the label and it will tell you on that label what size needle you should be using. That's not necessarily the law, but it's always a good place to start to make sure you like the way your stitch looks. The new tool that we have here today that we didn't talk about last time is a darning needle. Now, a darning needle for knitters is great. It's got a large eye so you can pass a relatively thick piece of yarn through, and it's also got a little hook at the end, little bent tip. Okay, so what you're going to be doing is making a strip of knitted fabric. It's done with a knit stitch and a purl stitch, so it makes what's called a rib knit stitch. So we'll come back to that in a minute. It's like when you have one of those cooking shows and they open up the refrigerator and the thing is done. I love that. We're going to cast on whatever number of stitches you want to make the width of your headband. Now, I'm using a heavier weight yarn and a size 9 needle, and I put 30 stitches on my needle when I did it. So there's 15 knit stitches and 15 purl stitches. The only thing that you have to remember is the number of stitches you cast on has to be an even number. We don't want to go with an odd number, it won't work out. So if you're using a lighter weight yarn like this, to get a product like this, this also has 30 stitches on it. And you can see how much narrower it is because the yarn is so much lighter weight. I believe I knit this with a size 5 needle. So it comes out a lot narrower. All right, so remember when we started off on our cast on last time, we started with a slip knot, and I'm going to do the same thing again with that. And that will put our first stitch onto the needle, and then we're going to use that easy loop cast on that we did, which hopefully you're all comfortable with. So you're going to get the even number of stitches on. Let's see, we have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Now this would produce a very narrow headband, but I'm just doing this to show you the stitch. So we're going to review our knit and purl stitch. Remember to make your knit stitch, you want to have your needle with all of the stitches on it in your left hand. You're going to take your right hand needle, go up through the front to the back, wrap around and through, pull it through. So there's your knit stitch. Now you want to take your yarn and bring it to the front of your project. So it ends up here, and you're not gonna wrap it around the needle, but you're gonna pass it through. So now it's in the front, and now we can take that purl stitch. And then we're going to put that into the back, the working yarn into the back, and take a knit stitch. Working yarn to the front, take a purl stitch, and continue down to the end of the row. Always alternating. You want your yarn in the front of your needles when you're making a purl stitch. You want your yarn in the back of your needles when you're doing a knit stitch. So the stitch is the same, it's just the placement of the yarn. Okay, so now we've gone to the end of the row, alternating between knit and purl stitches. We're going to turn our work so our stitches are on our left-hand needle. We're going to make sure that we get the working yarn and not this pesky tail. And then I want you to take a look at your stitches. You can see the difference between a knit stitch and a purl stitch. The purl stitches have these little bumps on them. That's a purl stitch. A knit stitch, it's hard to tell in the first row, but a knit stitch does not have the bump on it. So you always think knit stitch has not got a turtleneck on, purl stitch does. And when we come back through, we're going to be knitting the knit stitches and purling the purl stitches. So it's just like the last row. Here's your working yarn, knit stitch, yarn to the front, purl stitch, yarn to the back, and continue. Okay, that's it. For the body of this headband, that's all you're going to be doing. You're going to continue to knit your knit stitches, purl your purl stitches, making sure you're not knitting with that tail, and work on your tension. Make sure you like what it looks like. It takes a couple rows to go into it before you start to see this nice stretchy rib, but you'll see it soon. You're going to make your headband anywhere between, well, you want to make it so it goes comfortably around your head, and you can hold this up and see if it goes around your head. It's generally, for an adult headband, approximately 22 inches is what you're going to want to knit. Now, if you're having a lot of fun and you really like this and you don't want to stop with a headband, keep going. You could easily turn this into a scarf. It would be nice and cozy and warm, feel really good around your neck. You don't have to make a headband out of it, but that is the project that we're going to do today. So when you get to the 21, 22, maybe 19 if it's for a smaller child, you are then going to want to bind your stitches off. And remember, when you did that, you just knit a stitch, then you knit another stitch and pass that knit stitch over all the way down to the end. Put your yarn through that last loop and pull. And you want a decent amount of yarn here because you're going to be sewing with this yarn. Okay, we've got our finished piece of fabric here. I've threaded the tail through my darning needle. Just going to set that up there for a second. And this is pretty simple. You're going to take and fold your headband in half so that you've made a narrower strip of fabric. And then you are going to take and make a sandwich. You're going to bring all your ends together like this. And I don't know if you can see this, but if we had this in two different colors, that would be an interesting looking headband. You'd see an edge from one side, an edge from the other, an edge from the first side, and then an edge from the second. So it's just a kind of slip them together type of sandwich. And when you have it correct, you should have like this little sling of, you could rest a little chipmunk in there. And that's what you want it to look like. And believe it or not, this turns into a headband with a twist. Our last step of this is to simply sew with a whip stitch through all 4 layers. So here's my darning needle and here's my yarn. I'm going to start here at the end. I'm going to catch all 4 layers and pull it through. And then I'm going to come back, first layer, second layer, third layer, and through. Now this does not have to be what you would want your microsurgeon to be doing if you are having some work done, because you're not going to see this. You just want to make sure that all 4 of your edges are caught in all of your swipes. And you can, this is very stretchy. You can manipulate it. Don't worry about it. It's very difficult to make a mistake on this one. You don't want to go too far down into your fabric, but you also don't want to be right on the edge. Maybe like a little stitch down is good. If you go too far down, you're going to have the big lump where the twist is, and nobody wants a lumpy headband. Hopefully we'll be able to wear our headbands outside by the fall. Who knows? I hope everybody's finding that this whole knitting adventure is relaxing to you and that it's helping deal with some of the tension and the stress. It's probably causing a whole new set of stressors, but it is fun. So we get all the way to the end. We're going to come back and talk about this piece of fabric and this piece of fabric, but when you turn it, there you go. You have this great headband, really fancy twist. You don't see that seam, so it's not necessary, like I said, to be so precise. And you've got a great warm thing to put over your ears. You could go skiing in this. It'd be such fun. You could put a flower here. You could do whatever you want to embellish, but it's just a fun little project for a beginning knitter to get something that they can actually use. So again, let me show you how to finish off the ends. We get it all stitched together, and you have these 2 ends down here, and we're going to do our new skill for the day, which is weaving our ends in. In knitting, you don't want to tie knots. Knots are not so good. Every once in a while, there's an occasion where it has to happen, but we really want to avoid them. So what we do to avoid the knot is just weave our yarn back through. I'm going to start here. You don't have to go through all 4 layers. You shouldn't go through all 4 layers. But if you take 3 or 4 stitches and just go back, I'm only going through 1 layer here, and then I'm going to go back in the other direction 1 more. What happens is the yarn will felt to itself, and it will actually start to get, kind of become 1 fiber, and it won't pull out. So you can use some scissors, but that would be the end of that piece of yarn. And then I would come back and do the same thing with this tail, just weaving it through on the other side. Again, flip it around. No ends, no seam. People will think you're a genius. You've made something so cool. And that is the story of the knitted headband. And hopefully you will have some success with that and enjoy your first knitted, this is that tail we didn't move in, but I want you to enjoy your first knitted accessory that you can actually use. I think it'd be fun. If you are interested at all in any of the yarns that we have used here, I will be happy to put them in the comments. You can do what you did with the beginning knitting. Give us a call. We'll be happy to get it right out to you. And if not, remember, look at your yarn, get the correct needle size to go with it, and start your adventure.